Hi, I'm Rob. It's garage time. Hey everybody, welcome to the garage. It's your old pal Rob. As promised and foreshadowed in the last episode, right here we've got a aftermarket Chevrolet inline 6 distributor, and here we have the coil from the donor XJ6 1985 vintage, and here we have two Jag Series III ignition modules. This one's from the donor. This one I scrounged out of the boneyard. And we definitely know that this one works because we've also got some aftermarket parts that I bought, which will relate to all these things. In fact, all of these various ignition things are related to each other. All right. Let's pull the cap off. Okay, got to undo this connector. Right. There we go. Come on. There. Take the cap off. There's the rotor. Go, we take the rotor off. Here's the guts of the General Motors high energy ignition distributor. Right here is the mechanical advance mechanism. And right here is the ignition triggering module that triggers the coil in the place of points and condenser in an old style points and condenser ignition. On this side of the ignition trigger module, there's a white wire and a green wire. And you'll notice on the ignition trigger module, there's a W and a G for white and green. And on this side, there are three wires. This side of the ignition trigger module connects to these three wires. The red wire is positive, the brown wire is negative, and this wire is ground. Goes to this capacitor here. This is to prevent radio interference, as far as I know, I believe. I could be wrong. This ignition trigger module is the same as this brand new AC Delco ignition trigger module marked with General Motors. This is a General Motors manufacturer. There's the W and G. There is the B and C. So what does this Jaguar ignition module have to do with this HEI distributor? I'll show you. What I'm going to show you right now, I did not figure out on my own. I learned this on another YouTube page. Here's the name of the YouTube channel. It's very helpful. But here, let's take this apart and I'll show you what's going on. These tools are pretty ancient. I bought these in the 1980s. So there are four 5mm screws on this ignition module. Let us remove them. Then we pull the cover off, and lo and behold, right there is a General Motors HEI ignition module. It's got the two contacts on this side, it's got the two contacts on this side. This is a little resistor. It's supposed to attenuate RF signal, radio frequency so that your radio doesn't sound crappy. This, I forget what this is. This is a capacitor or a diode that does, I don't know what. But suffice to say, the Jaguar ignition module is fundamentally a GM HEI. But I'm not going to put this new ignition module in because we know that this one works. To reiterate, now it turns out that I had a plan. I had an idea that what I would do is use one of the Pontiac overhead cam 6s as the first engine in the Jag Special, because I didn't know how simple it was going to be to hook up the Jaguar ignition. I knew that it had that Bosch L-Jetronic engine management system, and I didn't know whether that included the ignition and whether I was going to have some kind of hassle making that work, because as you can see, there are 2 contacts on the plus side. There's the plus. There are 3 contacts on the negative side, and so I did not know what was going on with that. Turns out that was an unnecessary confusion for me, because it's really simple to hook these things up and make sparks come out of the distributor. And what we're going to do is make sparks come out of this distributor. And so that's the scoop. That's why I had all these various HEI modules out here, just so I could get to the place where I show you that the Jaguar ignition module is actually a General Motors HEI ignition module. It's just not inside the distributor, and rather than having the coil in the distributor cap, the coil is separate. Same system. So before I put this on and try to make sparks come out of the Jaguar distributor, I have to do this. Hey everybody, right now we are underneath the Jag Special, because what I got to do is fit this thing up into there. This is a miniature high torque starter that I got from Jags. It is supposed to mimic the mounting of both a small block Chevy and a big block Chevy. And the adapter plate that mates the Jaguar engine to the General Motors Turbo 350 mimics the starter placement for a small block Chevy. And so what I'm going to do is put this thing up in there and see exactly whether it engages with the flex plate. I do not have the torque converter connected to the flex plate because it doesn't have any fluid in it, and we're not going to run the transmission yet. First, I want to see if I can get some spark out of the engine. In order to do that, I have to turn the engine over. So let's move some cameras around, and then we'll see about sticking this thing up in there. This is a shim that came with the John's Cars adapter kit. We're going to stick that in there and see what happens. And then up you go. Ew. So that. Let's get the shim and slide it in there. There we go. Then short bolt goes where? Here. Let's grab, there we go. Come on. There. So that. And that. Just flip myself around here. Whoops. What I've got here is my starter test cable kit that I made. This one right here goes from the ground on the battery to the chassis ground right down here. I don't know if you can see that. Probably not. I don't think the camera's at the right angle. But this end goes to the chassis ground. This end goes from the chassis ground to a bolt on the starter. So I make sure I have a really good ground to the starter. That goes on last, of course, or it attaches the battery last. This is the hot lead, which goes from the positive terminal on the battery that's right here to the 12-volt power terminal on the starter. This right here is the lead that will go to the positive terminal on the solenoid, which is right here. This right here is the switch that turns it all on and off, on, off. It had a fuse in it, but it kept blowing the fuse. It's a 20 amp switch, which is, or 25 amp, something like that. It's beefy enough that it can run a starter, or it can certainly run the solenoid. This blade terminal goes here on the hot lead, and then this ring terminal goes to the positive solenoid terminal on the starter. So let's get some things hooked up and see if we can make that starter work. Okay, firsties. Okay. It's going to be a whole lot harder when I have the bodywork on here. There we go, there's that. Yeah. In you go. Run this experiment from down on the bottom. You go there. And you go there. Oh. That sucked. Okay, folks. Let's not cause any inadvertent sparks this time. I've made some modifications to my test harness. I'll show you those later. But we are, in fact, enjoying success. Check this out. Yeah. The starter works. Looks okay to me. Cool. Well, yay, success. And you heard or maybe saw the inadvertent sparks. Let's undo the ground strips so I don't do that again. Yeah. Let's undo the ground because that's the thing you do. There. No more inadvertent sparking. Okay, so yeah, like a dummy, I left this Whoopsie. This, I don't know if you can see right there, that mark. You can see where it's burned away slightly. Yeah, from going bzz, 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 when I was pulling it through. So what I did was I just insulated it by the simple expedient of cutting off some pieces of old bicycle inner tube. Bicycle and motorcycle inner tube are two of the most useful recyclables I have in my shop. So I connect them together. I push the insulator down over the bayonet joint, and there we go. But we don't need to do that now because we're done for now. The next thing we got to do is take the cap off, see which way it turns, and then hook up one of those HEI modules and see if we can make spark come out of this thing. That would be so awesome. And so what I've got now is a test setup so that I can make some sparks come out of the XJ6 distributor. Let's turn some more cameras on. Here's my test setup. Here is the distributor from the XJ6. Here is a spark plug connected to one of the spark plug outlets on the distributor cap. I'm not sure which terminal that is, doesn't matter. Here is the original coil from the old donor XJ6. Don't need you yet, get out of here. Right here is the ignition module from the 1985 XJ6 that serves as the donor. Here is a ground wire that goes from this sheet metal to the body of the distributor so that the distributor is grounded. This piece of sheet metal, this is a piece of 25 thousandths thick sheet metal, just regular hardware stuff. This acts as the ground plane. This acts as though it were the chassis ground. Here, right here, is my fabulous and ever wonderful test harness that you saw me use to test the starter. Right down there are the wires coming from the distributor from the ignition sensor itself. Let's see right there, there's the wires coming out. And the reason I use that is because it's easy to make sure they go to the right one, because those two terminals on the ignition module are two different sizes. These right here, the one on the right is marked B and the one on the left is marked C. Right goes, it's red, right goes to the hot lead, and C, which is green for ground, goes to the negative lead. Here we have our battery connected from the hot side to the hot lead on the coil through our little switch, which is off right now. And then we have just my old jumper cables that are connected to the ground plane. And right here what I have is my 3/8 drive impact gun with a 7/8 inch socket on it, which just so happens to just about fit onto the distributor drive. So let's connect some stuff. Connect the ground. There we go. The ground is connected. The hot is connected. The ground is connected. The ignition module is connected. The wires are going to the correct terminals on the coil. Let's turn it on and watch that spark plug. Look at that, will you? It's making spark, which is very encouraging. Hey. So anyway, there's been a whole lot of preparation going on for the next thing I'm going to show you. You saw me make spark come out of the distributor over on the bench using my little test setup. And now what we're going to do is make spark come out of the spark plugs all the way along the engine. So what we've done is we've set up a whole other test setup here. The crankshaft damper that has the timing marks engraved into it is at 0. This is pointing to cylinder 1. Cylinder 1 is here at the back of the engine, not at the front where you would logically think. Cylinder 1 is right here. I happen to also know that the firing order, which I have written onto the coil, the firing order is 1, 5, 3, 6, 2, 4. Yeah, okay. Let's put the distributor cap back on, put the wires in, and see if we can make some spark come out. Let's explain what's going on with this thing. This is, right here, the original ignition switch from the donor XJ6. Right here is the part that would have had the steering lock on it, and you can see right there, the steering lock goes in, pull the key out, it pops out. So that we're not going to use anymore. In fact, what I'm going to do is drill some holes in here, thread the holes, and then make an L bracket, and this will be the thing that mounts it to the back of the dashboard so the key pokes through. But what I did yesterday was I figured out where all of these wires went. This is the harness that comes out of, obviously, the starter switch. Goes to one of these really high quality and good connector plugs. These harness connectors that Jaguar used, they're really good. They seal great, and they're nice and tight, and they're actually kind of a pain in the ass to get apart. But this is the little section that came out of the dashboard harness. I went down there yesterday and I scrounged through until I found this, and I took it and of course I cut it off. I added some spade connectors to it, and then I spent some time figuring out exactly where all these wires are supposed to go. I have several manuals. I have the factory service manual, which does not have the wiring diagrams in it. So if you have a 1985 Jaguar XJ6 and you buy the factory service manual, which is otherwise very complete, you will not find the wiring diagram. I do have two Haynes manuals. One is, I don't know, like a 78 to 86 that a buddy of mine at work gave to me. It is super ratty, but it's got wiring diagrams. When I got the donor XJ6 way back in 2018, I bought another Haynes manual that goes from 77 to 87, which is when the original XK engine went out of production, for the XJ6 anyway. And that's got wiring diagrams in it. When I initially started testing this, I was just plugging my multimeter into this side of the harness connector, and I was getting no response. What I had to do is actually take this thing apart to figure out what contacts touched what. And what I was able to figure out, first of all, I made it work. All the contacts work now. And then I was able to figure out what was what. Looking at the wiring diagram in the old book, I was able to figure out that this big brown wire right here was power in. That's the hot lead going into the ignition switch. And then this yellow and white lead right here, which goes to two smaller wires right here through the connector. This is the starter solenoid circuit. Power in, starter solenoid. Then we come to this, just one individual white wire right here, this white wire, which goes through the connector and comes out to these two white wires. This is power to the ignition coil. And it branches off and goes somewhere else, but I've doubled these together, and this goes to the ignition coil, to the positive side of the ignition coil. And then there's this big old white and pink single wire. Single wire comes out of the ignition switch. Single wire comes out of the harness connector. And this is power to the car. So anyway, let's go over here and I'll show you how it connects. Here's the hot side of the battery, which goes to hot. Boom, like so. Let's pull the insulator up. Oh, let's make sure this thing is off. Yeah, this thing's off, good. Pull the insulator up because we don't want to touch that to anything steely. Okay, here is white, which goes to the hot side of the coil. There's the hot side, there's the negative side, hot side of the coil. Boom, come on. White and yellow goes to the solenoid. Come on. Have my bicycle inner tube insulators, which makes life easy. So there's that. Now, we're just going to be careful with power to the car. And the setup here, from the distributor to the Jaguar ignition module casing with its General Motors ignition module screwed into it, all the grounds are good. Here are my two test wires coming from the output of the ignition module to the negative side and the positive side of the coil. Here are the two wires going into the connector from the distributor side. Now, let's turn this thing on and then crank it over and watch for spark. How about that? Cool, huh? Let's do it again, because that's always fun. Whoa. Oops. You nitwit. Remind me to put some electrical tape on that. I want to watch the last two, cylinders 1 and 2. There we go. Okay, so, and before I electrocute anything else, let us disconnect the hot lead. Boom. Yeah. There we have it. Spark coming out of all 6 spark plugs. 1, 5, 3, 6, 2, 4. All right, so anyway, we're going to disassemble all of this. Going to put the battery back on the charger and then move on to the other aspects of the program, which I only partially described. This is exciting. Spark. We have 2 of the fundamental ingredients for making combustion happen in an engine. We have air and we have spark. Now we got to figure out fuel and then cooling and electrical system, all the other stuff. But first, we're going to figure out fuel, and we're going to get the oil cooler in place because this thing will not run without the oil cooler on it. You can't put oil in it and have the oil circulate because it has to get pumped through the oil cooler. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Exciting. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you around the channel. 1, 2, cool. 1, 2, brilliant. 3, 4. Well, my daddy, he raced stock cars a long, long time ago at New England's fastest quarter mile, doing old Westboro Road. Me and Mom would rally around in their MGTD, but they bought a Porsche 356 the year my mom had me. I was raised by gearheads, this apple fell not far from under Daddy's tillage, messing around with cars. Come on with me. You're going to go do some more wobbly handheld. Do I have to? Yes, you do.